everybody, and welcome to the Aggieville Alleycats podcast, where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. I'm Ace Edwards, right alongside
Connor Baltazar.
And we were worried about this game. Okay, well, one of us was worried about this game.
I wasn't not worried about this game, but I wasn't as worried as you were.
Yeah, but yeah, your Kansas State Wildcats comes out with a victory in the cat fight, 40-12 up against the Missouri Tigers, my childhood team. And we'll just go straight into the general game day recap. It's going to be a pretty standard recap episode in terms of the outline, but in terms of the general game day recap, we really have three main takeaways, or at least three that I can think of. Firstly, this is two games to start the season without a non-garbage time touchdown. But because Eli Drinkowitz is the way he is, you can read that in several different ways. The only touchdown that was given up by the K-State defense was the last play of the game. And that's just impressive.
Yeah. It's 8 quarters without a meaningful touchdown. Yeah, technically there was a touchdown at the end of the fourth quarter, but if you apply any level of context to that situation, you can look at it and see they pretty much got 3 last plays. Granted, 2 of them you can't be too upset about. The last one was kind of Mickey Mouse, but
yeah.
I'm not upset. It would have been nice to not allow the touchdown, just to keep that stat a little easier to keep track of without the garbage time qualifier, but it really doesn't matter in the same way the touchdown didn't matter. So, yeah, like you said, incredibly impressive from the defense to go this long without a touchdown.
Yeah, and then we'll go over a bit more of the defensive stats because there are a lot of people that, to show our hand a little bit, the offensive MVP was very obvious, but the defensive MVP, there were a lot of options. But the next thing we took away was the passing game looks improved, but still not at a particularly high level yet. And that could be attributed to the rain, but what did you think of it?
I definitely did think it looked a little better, particularly because there was at least one big pass play that didn't count. It was that pass to Deuce Vaughn, and that ended up getting called back because of, I think, a Cade Warner offensive pass interference.
Yeah.
And so there were at least a few plays that didn't count that maybe should have. And there are other reasons, but it definitely looked better than it did against South Dakota. I'm no longer in alarm bells mode, but I would like to see more continued improvement.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. It's to where each time, I hate to do this, but there's kind of a built-in excuse for both times. The first one, it was an extremely vanilla offense that we didn't need to pass the ball much in. And then this time it was raining the entire game. So the ball was probably throwing and catching a rock. So, I'm not worried about it. The final general takeaway before we go into game stats is just the penalties. And I know that Kleiman said after the game he's never going to complain about losing 40-12, but there are a lot of penalties in this game. And even if it wasn't an abnormal amount of penalties, a lot of them were consequential. For example, you had the Cade Warner offensive pass interference. You had the Seth Porter, I think it was unsportsmanlike or personal, where it caused a Seth Porter penalty, where a punt was downed at the 1 or 2 yard line, but that penalty brought it to where it was basically a touchback. So it's not that there were an inordinate amount of penalties, though it did feel that way because every single one of them was of genuine consequence.
Yeah, that's kind of how I felt. It was 8 penalties for 68 yards, and yeah, there was a bunch. It seemed like almost every penalty, there was a big play that it negated, or it was in a big moment, like the Eli Huggins jump off sides on the first drive, when Mizzou was very clearly not going to snap it. However, he did have a video interview after the game where he said that he thought that the center twitched the ball
Yeah.
and that's why he jumped. So I mean, the penalty still got called, so we can say that. But um, I'm not worried about it as much going forward unless it continues. Again, that's kind of I'm gonna try and be consistent on that stance that I have the passing game. But it was frustrating because for that reason, I really felt like we could have won. We could have put up like close to 60 points in this game.
Oh yeah.
If it weren't for the self-inflicted penalties, some of the struggles of the passing game. But then again, Kleiman does also have a good point where it is really hard to complain about a 40-12 victory over a Power Five opponent.
Yeah.
Um, especially one that has as much history as this one. But the penalties, I'll be concerned if it continues, but
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yeah, especially in a game that I was telling you before the game, this is the most excited and the most anxious I'd been for a single K-State game since I'd been here. And I imagine that there were a few people that on the team that felt the same way. In fact, there's one person on the team that we know for a fact felt the same way.
Yeah.
King Felix was not very happy.
He was getting pretty chippy out there. Well, I shouldn't say shouldn't say chippy because he oh, it wasn't like he was like playing dirty or anything, but he was passionate is probably the better way to put it.
He had choice words for the left tackle.
He did, and he still had himself a pretty solid game. It's going to be hard to get through any double team at a Power Five level, and he was double team pretty much the entire game, but he still did get at least half a sack. But yeah,
Yep. Now we can move into the stats for this game. We'll start off with the passing stats, which only one person recorded any passing stats, despite Jay Grubley coming in for the last drive. That was Adrian Martinez. He was a 9 for 20 with 101 yards. I believe the adjusted completion percentage on PFF was something like 63.7. It was so there were a couple of drops to mix in with that. I think not accounting for drops, it ends up as 12 for 20 with probably 130. Like I said, the passing game wasn't necessarily it's not that it wasn't there. It was just take it or leave it. It's fine.
yeah. There were some drops in there. There was a couple big ones. It was kind of like penalties. I know Malik, he had a drop that, granted, the throw was a little low, but it was very catchable.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to give him a pass on it. And I think it would have been a first down on a third down, maybe.
Mhm.
Then Phillip Brooks, he had a drop as well that he also definitely should have had. So there were some frustrating drops in there. Adrian did have a few misfires as well, a couple overthrows. But for the Benson, he also had a drop, the
Yeah.
big third down drop, as I recall. So frustrating drops in there. But it was a better day, I think, for Adrian though.
Yeah. Yeah. You'll take a win no matter how it is. And I also forgot to mention and write down that Adrian Martinez also had 52 yards on the ground, 13 rushing and a touchdown. Then Deuce was 24 for 146 on the ground with two touchdowns and one reception for 4 yards, and also one billboard on the ride back to Columbia. I feel like that's the most elite stat he has.
Yeah, that was very funny to see. We don't normally
So
see stuff like
cold.
that from K-State, so I was a little bit surprised. I didn't think it was real at first, and Taylor Bratt clarified that it is in fact real. But yeah, that was really funny. And then this is yet another seemingly classic Deuce Vaughn has a plus phenomenal game that just kind of flies under the radar, save for a few carries. At least it felt like that.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, he truly had an incredible game, and we're just like, yeah, that was a pretty average Deuce Vaughn performance. But
Yeah. Yeah. And DJ Giddens had himself two carries for 29 yards and a touchdown. I've seen a particular nickname floated around for him. I'm not sure if I'm ready to assign that nickname, so I'm not going to say it yet. But, he's DJ Giddens is still definitely the RB2. In terms of receiving, Phillip Brooks had 3 for 57 and a punt return touchdown, which that was immediately after I think it was 45 minutes break where also shout out to Michael, the hero of the day. You didn't
What a
see it,
guy.
but we are saluting Michael. Michael, if you're out there, please contact us. Please. Um, that's a story we'll have to tell someday. But coming immediately out of the 45-minute rain delay in which the students were singing 99 bottles of beer on the wall, amongst several other things, and also cheering MU's towel guy, they called a quarterback draw, punted the ball, and then Phillip Brooks had a house call. Brooks had quietly a pretty good receiving day as well.
Yeah, he did statistically 3 catches, 57 yards, by far the best day for any receiver thus far. He had that long play, 28 yards, where he about got into the end zone on that. It was kind of like a fake quarterback run, and then just a pass up the seam, kind of similar to that concept that South Dakota ran last week with the our own wrinkles. But it was a nice play. He did have a costly drop, but he did also have the punt return touchdown. So it's hard to be too upset with him. Like to see it get cleaned up. But yeah, Phillip, not a terrible day.
Yeah. Next up was Malik, 2 for 26 with a drop. He had a good day. Seth Porter, 1 for 7. Cade, 1 for 4. And Benson at 1 for 3. So again, the offensive stats may seem pretty underwhelming because, well, they are. And another note on the offense was this kind of feeds into the defense a little bit. I would have liked it if we capitalized on the turnovers in MU territory a bit more, especially in the third quarter. But by then, I honestly think we'd kind of shut the valves off a little bit, especially by like the second turnover. We're like, okay, we come on now. We don't need to run it up on them that bad. But yeah, I think that's probably my biggest ding for the offense was just not capitalizing on those turnovers as much as you should.
Yeah, that was honestly getting really frustrating at that point because that was right before the game was fully in hand. I really would have liked us to do more with those turnovers than we did. I mean, getting 4 interceptions on 4 straight possessions as a defense is incredibly rare. So I would have liked to see us capitalize a little bit better on that, but we did not, unfortunately. I think we only got 1 touchdown and a couple of field goals out of it.
And one missed field goal.
Yeah, then a missed field goal as well. But we definitely should have done a lot more with that. But unfortunately, we were just not quite able to do so. But
Yep. And you can take defensive stats because I just hoarded all the offensive stats.
fine by me. Daniel Green, he led the way with 7 tackles. He had a tackle for loss as well. Then he also had an interception that took me a second to track because I was following the running back being covered by Austin Moore over the middle, and I saw the quarterback wind up and throw from the corner of my eye, and the ball just never arrived, and I was trying to figure out where it went. And Daniel Green just
I thought he spiked it, honestly. I
yeah,
thought he slipped and he spiked it.
And Daniel Green just emerges with the ball somehow, kind of reminiscent of the Wyatt Hubert pick against Mississippi State in 2018. That was before your time, Ace. But
no, I watched the game.
No, well then you might remember it. It was about the only good thing to happen in that game. But yeah, Daniel Green had a really nice day. Austin Moore also had a really, really good day. I thought 6 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, and a quarterback hurry. He has been a lot better than I think anybody expected him to be as the second linebacker. I've really enjoyed watching him so far this year, and I think it's only going to get better. Josh Hayes, he also had 4 tackles, 2 tackles for loss. He was really, really good. I thought outside of like the first possession.
Yeah.
The first possession, he had like a big missed tackles, I recall, of Brady Cook that allowed for a first down. Other than that, he had some really great open field tackles, was making some really nice hits, and played well. He did have that one pass breakup that was nearly a pick that became an reception, but I'm not going to hold that against him because that's just bad luck. But
that could have happened to anybody.
Yeah. Julius, he had 4 tackles, 3 huge hits as well. he clearly spent some time working on tackling form this offseason because it seems like every tackle he has is just a major hit that everybody in the stadium can feel. But
Yeah.
he's been fun to watch. He only had one big question mark play, and that was when Luther Burden got behind him at the beginning of the third quarter.
Yeah.
But it was a really bad throw, and Julius was close. So I was a little bit concerned about that, but we didn't really see anything else like that throughout the rest of the game. So I'm not gonna let it bother me long term unless it becomes a habit. And it's also Luther Bird, and he's just unbelievably athletic. We expected him to get behind the receivers at least once or twice, or behind the corners, I should say. Khalid Duke, he had a nice day. He had 3 tackles. Um, Honestly, nothing super noteworthy on those, as I recall. He had 3 tackles.
Yeah.
Good job, Khalid Duke, I guess. Kobe Savage had himself a nice day as well. 3 tackles and an interception. He's been a lot of fun to watch so far, flying around the field. He had the first pick. It was a really nice pick as well. Athletic play. So that was nice to see. Eli Huggins, he had a tackle for loss and a QB hurry. Again, nice to see him kind of come back after an early mistake and make some nice plays down the road. He had 3 tackles as well. Felix had 3 tackles and half a sack, and I think like a million taunts of the Mizzou offensive line.
Yeah.
He had himself a nice game, attracting attention away from others. So nice day for Felix. Brendan Mott had 2 tackles and a tackle for loss. His tackle for loss, that was the one where Austin Moore, I think, almost had it, or Matlick maybe. And the running back, Pete, reversed field and ran even further back. And then Brendan Mott got him way, way back for like a big time loss, as I recall. Yeah, it was 14 yards, according to the K-State stats.
Yeah.
Bo Palmer and Dre Cheatham each had 2 tackles. D Hentz, he had 2 tackles, 2.5 tackles for loss and half a sack. D Hentz was really, really good. I thought in this game. I thoroughly enjoyed watching him. He's been a little surprising how good he's been so far this year, I'd say.
Yeah.
Sincere Mason had a tackle, a pick, and a pass breakup.
And also an insane PFF coverage grade.
Yeah, his PFF coverage grade was absolutely nuts. I don't know how accurate it is, but I mean,
I'll take a 91.
yeah. Well, we'll say the good ones are right, the bad ones are wrong.
Exactly. That's what we do with Echo.
That is true. Sincere's pick could have very easily been a Julius Brent's pick as well, because they were both right there. It was not a good throw at all. Nick Allen, he played a few snaps and then got a deflected interception. I believe it was deflected at the line by somebody.
Yeah.
Then like a big group of players had a tackle apiece. Matthew Mashmeyer, Seth Porter, Echo Boydo, Omar Daniels, Nikendre Steiger, Cody Selfabine, TJ Smith, and then Uso Seamalo. They all had 1 tackle. TJ also had a pass deflection in the end zone that should have ended the game, but did not. And then after that, Ty Zettner Punting had an excellent day.
He really had a nutty day.
He did. He had 4 punts, 217 yards, averaged 54.2 yards per punt with a long of 66. 2 inside the 20. I think both of those were inside the 5, maybe.
Yeah, I think, both of them were inside the 5.
Yeah, and then 3 50-plus yard punts. That is a heck of a day for Ty Zettner. He was awesome. Good for him. Normally, it's a bad thing when your punter has a great day because it means you're punting a lot, but it was not that in this case, at least. He just performed well with the 4 punts that he had.
Yep. We always got to give respect to the punters whenever Legatron shows up. So now that we've gone over the general game day recap and the stats, we can go over our game day grades, where we go over every single position, including offensive and defensive coordinators, giving them a grade from F to A+, F meaning they single-handedly lost us the game, and A+ meaning they basically single-handedly won us the game or had an absolutely spectacular performance. So we're going to start with the man under center, as we always do, and that is Adrian Martinez. And the quarterback for me, this was a game where it was certainly improved, but just like what I noted with the passing game, it wasn't great. but it was enough when combined with the rushing attack. I'm going to give Adrian Martinez a C plus.
That's exactly what I gave him as well. Passing game was a slight improvement. I'd say running game was consistent with South Dakota. And then getting a lot of the passing failures. He did have a few misfires, but there was also some drop issues on the wide receiver side, which we will get to here in a bit. But yeah, I'm not too upset with the results, especially considering the rain. Granted, I suppose you could say that the catching for the rain goes both ways, and we got 4 interceptions on the defensive side, but um, receivers, we're not there yet, but we'll talk about them. C plus for Adrian.
Yeah. Next up is running backs. This will be the second week in a row where the Deuce Vaughn room gets an A plus.
Yeah, I gave an A plus for Deuce and I suppose DJ as well. You could, I guess, subtract a little if you want to for the Anthony Frias fumble there at the very end. I'm not going to do that because it hardly matters. So A plus because Deuce was phenomenal with I think right at 150 all-purpose yards and 2 touchdowns.
Yep.
And then DJ had a really nice run there at the end too. So no reason not to give an A plus here.
Yep. Next up is probably the most interesting one and the one we'll have the most to talk about, I imagine, or at least the most, unfortunately, negative. So the wide receiver room is next up. Cards on the table, I gave him a D plus. Not only because, well, mostly because of the drop issues, but there were also a lot of times that it seemed like their routes just weren't as crisp as you thought I would, and as you would want them to be, I should say. And I hate to say I know, but I know that Thad Ward is not coaching them to run the routes on, like, he's not coaching the routes that they're running on a few times because they're not as sharp because that was one thing that whenever I was going back to watch a little bit of tape from, I think it was Central Michigan that he worked at. It was either Central or Western where he worked at. That was one thing that was always his calling card was the receivers were always really good. He coached Corey Davis, and he was one among many things known for his pretty crisp routes coming out of college. So the main one that I'm thinking of was an in-breaking route to Malik Knowles. Now, again, it's raining. The field is a little slick. I'm willing to give a little bit of grace for that. But at the same time, it wasn't a great route, even if he did slip. The route running just hasn't been as sharp, and there's been a little bit of issues separating in true man situations, which luckily MU didn't really seem to run a lot of them. And mix all of that with the drop issues, they ended up getting a D plus for me. Like they weren't losing us the game, but they were definitely below average.
I gave him a D. The drops really bothered me. Malik had a pretty bad one. It was egregious. Same with Phillip. And yeah, like you said, I feel bad giving them that bad of a grade because yeah, the field conditions probably could have been better, but everybody was playing on the same field and Mizzou's receivers didn't have glaring drop problems. There were some throwing issues, but I don't know how rain related that was. The receivers not super inspiring whatsoever. I was pretty disappointed. Last week I thought it was a bit of both in the passing game with who was struggling. This week I felt like it was definitely more on the receivers than on Adrian. Yeah, Adrian a few misfires, but receivers, drop issues, not the best routes, like you said, Ace. And I don't know. I don't want to revert back to last year, early last year with receiver performance. I'm hoping that we can turn the corner here sooner rather than later, because Tulane I think is going to be the ultimate measuring stick for what to expect. Would like to see more rotation at receiver because we saw the same 3 guys for almost the entire game.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure what their strategy is with that. But yeah, D for me.
Unless they're still hiding RJ Garcia,
which would be very strange. Don't know why they'd want to do that, but oh well.
I don't know. Next up is tight ends, fullbacks. To me, they were the ultimate. They were fine. Room. There's not much that I can really say there. They blocked pretty well. Ben Sinnott had a drop, but not much to say. I ended up giving them just a B.
I give them a C plus for I guess effectively the same reason. I can't really be that upset with them. Uh, Senate did have the drop that was really frustrating. Jackson Dean got a handoff out of the shotgun, which was really interesting. Um, then they blocked pretty well for a majority of the game, I'd say, but they were complete non-factors in the passing game. Sammy Wheeler has been dead silent for most of the year so far. He's been unnoticeable on the field, really. Um, and yeah, just not a ton to say about this room. Again, they just didn't really produce a lot. C plus.
Yeah. Offensive line, my favorite room to evaluate. This one, if we broke it down, I would honestly go tackles get an A minus and interior gets a straight B. To me, it ends up balancing out to a B plus. And the main reason for that is because there's a little bit that just seemed lacking from mainly one player, and unfortunately it was Panzer. Panzer to me seemed like he just kind of had this okay game where he was getting beat off the line, getting beat on the interior a bit more than he should have. And again, you never know. MU's defensive line is probably the strength of their team, alongside their entire front six is the strength of their team. That doesn't mean that I'm going to raise the grade because the other team's better, because I expect the offensive line to be able to match anybody, no matter who lines up. But, KT is a surprisingly good left tackle considering what we saw in
20.
20. Considering what we saw in 20, Cooper Beebe is as advertised as a left guard. It's his natural position. Gilly at center is an upgrade to Noah Johnson last year. And then Christian Duffy, barring the one false start, which we marked as the Christian Duffy moment of the game, is doing his job. In fact, I think he was the highest rated offensive lineman this week on PFF. But to me, it's just that one little spot, and B plus is not a bad grade. It's just B plus. They were a good unit this week with a couple of issues.
Yeah, I gave him a B for roughly the same reasons. They were fine, above average. Not incredible, but they were passable. A couple of mistakes. KT I think had like a big holding call at one point that wiped something out. Then Duffy's false start. And then yeah, Panzer didn't have the greatest day. Pass protection struggled for a little while. But for the most part, wasn't really that bad. Run blocking was really good, for the most part as well, especially down the stretch. But yeah, they weren't that absolutely phenomenal unit that I was hoping for this game, but they were still a good unit and a net positive to the team. So B for me.
Yeah. Moving on to the defensive side of the ball, starting with the defensive line. This was a game where, again, it's similar to the offensive line where they had a good game, but I would want a little bit more. I want Nate Matlick to be, I want him to get that extra yard because he's been within a yard of sacks. I remember seeing it like 3 times this last game, and it happened twice during the South Dakota game. He just hasn't gotten there yet. But to me, the Huggins not false start, offsides or neutral zone infraction, whatever they ended up calling it, that knocks it down a little bit. And then other than that, it just seemed like a generally good but not outstanding performance. I gave him a B plus.
I gave the D line an A for this game. I thought that they were really good. Felix was taking 2 guys every single play. Matlick was getting almost there every single play. Huggins and Hentz I thought were really good. Brendan Mott has continued to impress as well. Jalen Pickle I've enjoyed watching as well. I thought that they all did really good at playing assignment sound and taking linemen away for our linebackers to come in and clean up the mess a lot of times. So I gave them an A for that because I felt like they were very assignment sound. And they didn't have the splash stats that we've kind of gotten used to. But even so, they still were creating a lot of havoc. And they did a lot that I really liked. So an A from me for the D line.
Yep. Next up is the linebacking room, which in my opinion was the best room on well, maybe competing with the running backs for the best room on the team, just because of the absolute monster performances by Daniel Green and Austin Moore. If you would have told me that Austin Moore would have been the brightest spots of this defense, I would have laughed in your face. Not because I think Austin Moore is bad or not because I ever thought he was bad, but because I always viewed him as just okay. But Austin Moore had himself an amazing game both this week and last week. Obviously, both of them coming in with high impact performances. Austin Moore with 2 TFLs, Daniel Green with a pick. I ended up giving them an A plus.
Yeah, I gave him an A plus as well. I thought that they were excellent all game. Daniel Green making big hits per usual. Austin Moore had some really nice tackles and some great tackles for loss. Nick Allen had the random interception. And I thoroughly enjoyed watching them. They had an excellent game yet again. And I'm looking forward to seeing them continue this because that's my expectation at this point is that they're at least the one line is going to be really, really good. We didn't see Jake Clifton, as I recall, which was interesting after he played so much last week.
Yeah.
So maybe they're going to try and redshirt him and they're just being extra careful. But I'm looking forward to how this unit continues to progress because I thought they were really, really good.
Did you give him an A plus too?
I did give them an A plus.
Okay. Next room is the defensive backs, and this one was probably the one I struggled with the most because on one hand they had a couple of really really big splash plays, and but on the other hand the times they got beat were not great. I'm thinking of specifically the Lovett reception on a fade route up the sideline, and the fact that Julius Brents did kind of get cooked by Luther Burden. But outside of that, and outside of those two glaring misses, I thought they had a really good game. I ended up giving them an A minus because with a better quarterback, those two would have hurt a lot more.
I ended up going with an A plus for the DBs because they did get beat once by Luther Burden, but I think that was going to happen anyways, and it didn't end up mattering. And then the Lovett play was frustrating, but that was the lone perfect throw on the day, and also really great catch. Um, I gave them an A plus because I thought that coverage for most of the game was great. They had 4 picks, and well, 2 of them I suppose were defensive backs. But and they also were tackling really well for a lot of the game. Julius Brents had a really nice day tackling, along with Kobe Savage and others. I couldn't. I was very concerned after that first possession of the second half, where a lot of the splash plays and Luther Burden beating Julius Brents happened. But other than that possession, I really didn't have any moments where I was actively frustrated with the defensive backfield. So I gave them an A plus for that.
Next up is the offensive coordinator, Colin Klein. And this is another game. I ended up just copy and pasting my grade from the previous week, but for pretty much the same reason that he gets a mulligan because of the rain. He was still calling up plays that I felt were good for the situation, barring the turnover drives. Those really could have knocked him down a lot more. But to me, it was the ultimate fine performance. He gets a little bit of a pass in the passing game, no pun intended, because of the rain. I ended up giving him a B minus, which is the same grade I gave him last week.
I gave him a B minus, which is it's a slight step down from where I was last week because I am giving him a little grace, but I am also, I'm not going to let that go too far because it's understandable. I hate to be like, yeah, there's a valid excuse 2 weeks in a row, but there kind of is because, last week you have get out to the lead early and you have a Power 5 opponent. So you don't want to show too much. This week, it was a monsoon for half the game. So I get it. I do, but I don't want to give him too much leeway there. B minus is still a fine grade. I thought that he had some particularly creative plays, like the pass up the seam to Phillip Brooks in the first quarter, I believe it was. Might have been, may not have been. Deuce was utilized in an interesting way. I'd like to see more usage of Deuce in the passing game. Although it seems like in the passing game we were trying to use him more as a decoy than
Yeah.
anything else, to draw attention away from other things. Like on that play that I mentioned, to Phillip Brooks, Deuce's motioned out into the slot,
Yeah.
and that was, I think, meant to cause some confusion, disarray in the defense, which it worked really well. But B minus for me, lots of room for improvement, but again, 2 games in the year, I'm not going to hit the alarm bells.
Yep. Well, we'll see if the Tulane game gives us better weather.
I really hope so. Just
Yeah.
better weather and like a normal situation for a game. That's all I want.
Yeah, that would be awesome, wouldn't it? And now we get into the defensive coordinator, Joe Klanderman, and I believe for the first time, someone not named Deuce Vaughn in a room led by Deuce Vaughn. For the first time in the history of doing game day grades, I'm giving out an A plus 2 weeks in a row because what Joe Klanderman did, yeah, last week I struggled calling it a masterclass. No, this one was a defensive masterclass by Joe Klanderman, and there's not much that I can say that there's not much I can say about it.
Yeah, I gave him an A plus as well. For the reasons you've listed, there's not a whole lot I can say about it other than really the only times we got beat were understandable. You know, it was going to happen at some point with how talented the receivers are. But other than that, we were incredibly disciplined and aggressive. Really, really fun defense to watch. A lot of havoc plays, a lot of tackles for loss. I thoroughly enjoyed them, and I'm really happy with how Klanderman has been doing so far. So A plus from me.
Yep. It's amazing. He's getting 2 A pluses in a week. Can he make it 3? I hope.
I hope he can against Tulane, but
Yeah, that'd be a kind of a cause for alarm if Tulane is the game that he doesn't. But
yeah,
next up is we answer the questions we posed in the preview episode. The first one wasn't a question, but rather a statement. It was a battle of 2 new coordinators in K-State offensive coordinator Colin Klein and defensive coordinator Blake Baker. Here's what I'll say on this. I predicted this to be a defensive battle. I truly did. I did not account for the fact that the offense of MU would have turned the ball over 4 times. You see, that was a tactical error by me. I believe that if this game really did have the defense of MU and the defense of K, goodness gracious, the offense of K State rebooting. The defense of K-State and the defense of MU, if the time of possession was split equally as opposed to like 65-35, it would have been a lot closer as a defensive matchup. But as it stands, I believe that you can tentatively say and call this a draw because of the red zone and the turnovers and how the defensive MU responded to them. If I had to pick a winner, I would say Colin Klein because he won the game. But it was an interesting matchup to say the least.
yeah. I think that's a fair statement. I probably give Klein the edge here just because I don't think they utilize Luther Burden in a good way at all. I thought that they would design more to get the ball in his hands, and he had 1 catch for 3 yards. And yeah, he did have the play where he beat Julius Brents deep, but you know what, didn't really count because the ball was not completed.
Unfortunately, the stat sheet won't see it that way.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll give a slight edge to Klein here, mainly like just because he didn't really take advantage of those turnovers that well, and then also partially just because Mizzou's offense just really didn't look that good. I thought they looked pretty bad, and they should be embarrassed.
They really should. No, that's a Q&A question. I won't dive into that. Next question was, does Adrian Martinez let it fly this game?
He tried.
He tried, but it was raining.
Yeah. I think that if it was like an overcast, non-rainy day in Manhattan, Kansas, I think he lets it fly. But that was not what happened. So he did not. But he certainly attempted at times, just drop issues and whatnot. A couple misfires, but he looked more comfortable in the pocket, I'd say, for the most part. Was more decisive this week, I'd say, as well. But Yeah, I would say that he at least attempted to let it fly.
He tried his best. Next question. Does MU's run defense take a step forward or backwards? Having watched them play last year, this was a step forwards for them.
Well, if that's the case, then I guess I'll agree because I don't have a frame of reference for last year, which if this is a board, that's absolutely horrifying because they gave
Oh
up
no.
235 net. But
No. It was worse last year.
all right, I'll take your word for it. I
Because
believe you.
at least this game they look assignment sound, and I can chalk a good bit of it up to they were on the field for like 87 years.
Fair,
The
honestly.
last year it was literally the time of possession was about equal, but not because the offense was good, but because they kept scoring in one play off the run. They weren't giving up one play touchdowns. That's improvement.
Fair enough, honestly. Fair enough.
Yeah. Is it going to be MU's defense versus the world? Yes, it was.
It absolutely was. And you know what? It didn't even matter because their defense wasn't really doing that well either. Like even early in the game, they weren't doing great. So it's just by virtue of the fact that the defense played a little bit better than the offense did. I say a little bit. They were much better than their offense because their offense was that bad. But
Yeah.
yeah.
Can K State's secondary contain the athletes MU has at receiver? Apparently, yes.
Yeah. Save for a couple instances at the very beginning of the second half. K-State's completely contained and neutralized the receiving game. Lovett had that 40-yard catch, and Luther Burden had the fly that never was, and that was pretty much it. I mean, Lovett had about a third of Mizzou's total passing yards on a single catch. So, yeah, K-State was able to contain Mizzou at receiver uh, much more effectively than I expected.
Yeah. The final question we had was, can Drinkowitz keep himself from saying or do something stupid between the recording and the game? Credit to him, between recording the episode and the game starting, yes, he did. But
He waited till
after,
after.
he
Yeah.
waited until after the game. Oh my God. Were you
Uh,
surprised? Yeah, I was surprised. Why? Why were you? Oh my God.
I that was a very weird thing for him to say because I mean that's effectively him admitting that they completely underprepared and underestimated. Either that or they were overconfident going, which I suppose is almost an objective fact that they were
Mm-hmm.
overconfident. But yeah, he definitely had some less than intelligent things to say afterwards. Maybe he had something unintelligent to say at midfield when Kleiman kind of snuck out of the handshake a little quickly.
I feel like both of them kind of snuck out of the handshake. They're just like, I
Hmm.
don't want to talk to you right
Yeah.
now.
Kleiman was definitely more visible than Drink. Kleiman was definitely more visibly upset that he had to go be in the presence of Drink than vice versa. It seemed like to
Fair.
me. I don't know why. Maybe it was just frustration with how he handled the end of the game. Or maybe it was just a pent up frustration from how he spoke about Avery Johnson. I say spoke about how he subtly poked fun at a 17-year-old. But
And congratulations to that 17-year-old for clapping back and harder.
fair enough. But yeah, drink will always find a way to put his foot in his mouth.
God, I'm so excited for when his contract expires next year, if he makes it that long. But
Mm,
I don't see us punting within the first 3 weeks. Uh-huh.
they
How'd that
punted.
plan work out for you?
Oh, how many times did they punt against us? I think it was six.
I think
Yeah,
it was
six
six.
times. Also, their punter wasn't good. Maybe that's what he meant. Was that he didn't want to punt because their punter's like not that great. Like his punter like shanked a couple like outside, especially after the Brooks return touchdown. You could tell that he was just kicking him out of bounds,
Yeah,
really.
it's like I don't want to kick to Phillip Brooks, which I'm really surprised that more teams have not taken that approach.
Mm-hmm. Really strange because I think he now has four punt return touchdowns in his career.
Yeah, second in K-State history.
Yeah.
All right, so now that we've answered the questions, now let's give out our MVP awards. Do you want to go offensive? Do you want to do yours first for offense or defense?
I'll do mine first for offense, although it hardly matters because I think we're both just going to say Deuce
Deuce
Vaughn.
Vaughn.
Yeah, because he was great and had another phenomenal game, made some guys look silly, had a couple of big runs. What else do I need to say about Deuce Vaughn? He had like a 30-yard reception down the sideline that got called back. Um,
Dubious reasons.
Dubious reasons, one might say. Anything to add, Ace?
No, you can take defense too because the offense was a cop out.
I struggled with this for a while. Because I truly think that there's probably 5 people, maybe more, that you could give this to, and I'd say, yeah, you know what, I can believe that. But I ended up rolling with Austin Moore for this one. I feel like he's really earned this MVP. 6 tackles, 2 for loss, QB hurry. Um, he has been far beyond the expectations that I think anybody in the fan base had for him. And I have thoroughly enjoyed watching him play the last couple of weeks. He's been great right alongside Daniel Green. So Austin Moore is my MVP.
I agree with you. I had Austin Moore as my MVP too, and it's not just because we share a first name, but because just part of me wants to say it's because of the development, but that's not why. It's because he legitimately had the best defensive day. And like you said, the candidates that I was going through was Daniel Green, who had more tackles and a TFL and a pick. Austin Moore, who ended up getting it. Julius Brents, because every time he hits someone, they either explode and jack up the defense. Kobe Savage is everywhere on the field at once. Sincere Mason gets the second week in a row with an interception. Felix screamed really loudly and probably scared at least 2 of the offensive linemen.
Yeah.
But to me, it almost has to be Austin Moore just because he did everything that was asked of him and did not have any true lapses in what was asked of him. He knew his role and he excelled in his role exceptionally well, including those 2 tackles for loss. One was of major consequence. So, yeah, Austin Moore is my MVP as well. And congratulations to him.
Yeah. Yeah. He was phenomenal for the most part, I thought. And he was really great last week too. So I'm looking forward to hopefully him continuing this. I
Yeah,
mean, because we've reached a point where Will Honus is not going to step in and start once he's healthy.
nope.
And we're probably not even going to see a ton of Will Honus once he's healthy, just because
Austin
of
Moore
how
is
good Austin
taking
Moore's
that
been.
spot.
Yeah, that's Austin Moore's spot now. It's no longer Will Honus's spot. So
Yeah, which shame for Austin, not for Austin Moore, shame for Will Honus, but wow.
yeah,
That's all I can say is wow. But after MVPs, we always do general game day takeaways. First one, yep, offense still legit. I mean, defense is still very much legit. Mob is still here.
yeah, they were awesome all game. They were exciting, and they aggressive is the best word for them. I think their havoc rate continues to be great. Um, and I've thoroughly enjoyed watching the defense times more than the offense because this is going to be one of the one of the best defenses in the Big 12 if they continue this level of play. Um, and they'll be top 3 easily at this rate.
Yeah. We'll do handing off here so you can
And
take the next one.
offense still iffy. Running game is just fine for the most part. But passing game continues to struggle. Running game has had its share of lapses, but it's generally been pretty consistent. Passing game continues to struggle. Offense, though, as a whole, when you combine all of that, shaky. Not going to get overly concerned yet, but really need a good passing performance before we get into conference play against Tulane.
Yeah. Next up, no matter who is playing safety, every single option that has been deployed with regularity has been good. Which, if you would have told me that, well, arguably Sincere Mason has been the best of them. I would have believed you, but I probably would have raised an eyebrow and thought about it for a minute. But Kobe Savage, Josh Hayes, VJ Payne he's still getting meaningful snaps. You have TJ Smith occasionally getting in. Every single person that they've deployed at Drake Cheatham, all of them that have been deployed at safety have been not just serviceable, not just okay, but good at that role.
Yeah. That's been shocking given that back in media days, Kleiman was publicly talking about how big of a question mark the safeties were. And at this point, they're one of the strong points of the defense as a whole, with how good they've been and also how deep they've been, because they're probably 6 deep there right now, minimum.
Yeah, maybe he meant that the question mark was who starts because all of them are that good.
That is possibly what he meant, honestly. There's a lot of guys there that we really like, I think. And TJ was hurt week 1, but he's back now, and he was getting some playing time and didn't look like he had missed too much of a step.
No. Next up is you again.
Yeah. Even with just a few sacks, still getting a lot of pressure defensively. And yeah, like you said earlier, Nate Matlick, he I don't want to step on the toes of the next point, but he was getting really close to several sacks. Felix was getting in there a few times. Huggins got close. This was the sort of game where I think we get 3 or 4 sacks if Brady Cook isn't as quick as he is.
Yeah.
But it was just a really, really sound game for making Brady Cook uncomfortable in the pocket. The defensive line and linebackers continue to do a really good job in that department. I think Echo Boydo came off like a blitz once or something like that, and he got kind of close as well. So pass rushes continue to be good, aggressive and well timed. So a lot to like there.
Yep. You mentioned the next one, which was Matlick, but next one, Felix really hates him. He really, really hates them, which is so funny because that's where he would have ended up going if we didn't offer it.
Yeah, maybe there's like some pent up hatred there with like them never offering or seeing that potential that K-State saw in him, which is understandable. But yeah, he definitely had extra fire in him going into this game. I think he would have really liked to have had an additional sack in this game rather than just a half sack. But he was playing with additional passion, more so than he even usually does, because he's normally a very high motor player. But it was amped up in this game.
Yeah, I was really tempted to start the King is gonna kill you chant. King is gonna kill you. He was out for blood.
He was. And even though he didn't produce a ton, he was still taking a double team every play and freeing that up for others. So they're still that's still good for Felix because he's just taking up the room for others. But moving on, the offensive line's weak spot is probably right guard right now, but Hadley Panzer, he's still good. I think he's just, I think, the weakest link there right now. Obviously, the left side's been really good. Gilly's been good at center. Then Duffy's been pretty solid at right tackle as well. Panzer, I'll call it an adjustment period. I liked what I saw from him last year, and he's a natural center, I believe. At least he was in line to play center. So I'm not really that worried at all about it. But I'm looking forward to seeing how he develops on the rest of the season, because I think he's still a redshirt freshman or maybe a true sophomore if he had burned his redshirt last year.
He's young.
He's very young. He's very young. So I'm looking forward to seeing how he continues his development.
Yep. And the final note is the kicking game was not perfect, but it was improved. And I really do think that there's a little bit of credence to when Kleiman says, hey, when he misses a field goal, you don't talk to him because there's not really much that you can tell him. You just kind of have to let him figure it out. And yes, he did miss one field goal, but I believe that was the only one he missed, and the extra point was blocked, which is not the kicker. So, the kicking game is improved from last week. Not that it could get a whole lot worse, but it's improved, but still watch it.
Yeah. I definitely still have my eyes on this going forward, but yeah, he did miss a 31 yarder, which is frustrating, but he hit from 35 and 37. He did miss that one extra point, which, is frustrating as well, but like you said, it was blocked. So, you can't really get on the kicker for that. Um, yeah, I'm a little concerned going forward about it, but he did, I remember, hit like a 54 yarder or something like that against Texas last year. So he's at least got range. I'm interested to see how he performs going forward. Um, I I wouldn't say I'm comfortable in a like game-winning field goal position quite yet with him, but I'm interested to see how he develops because he is still very young. Redshirt freshman. I think he might actually be a true sophomore. That I think about it because he played a lot last year. But um, yeah, we'll see how the accuracy comes along because the power is there. It's just the accuracy and consistency that I'd really like to see. And then also I don't like bagging on the kickers because I know that's like 90% mental.
Yeah.
So I want to prop the kicker up and make sure that they're feeling confident. But
Yeah.
that's just me.
Yep. So that pretty much wraps up the recap of the cat fight and just final words on it, just to put a bow on it. If you could come up with one sentence to describe this game, what would it be? Apologies for not putting it on the outline, and I can go first if necessary.
One sentence.
Yeah.
I'll say surprisingly dominant by K-State.
Yeah. I would pretty much use the same word. It's that shockingly dominant against a team that they weren't expected to beat as bad.
Yeah.
Which good.
Yeah, good. There wasn't a ton of controversy about K-State winning the game. It was just in the manner in which it happened, I think. So
yeah.
good for the Cats.
Then you had stupid moron people like me saying this will be a defensive battle.
Most people thought that, I think, going into the game, after the passing game struggled last week, and Mizzou's defense was lauded throughout the week. But yeah, I don't think that was a like otherworldly projection or anything. But
yeah. But that pretty much wraps up this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. Tune in next time when we have episode 100, which we have. I'm not going to say we have anything particularly big. It's a big Q&A episode mixed with a weekly recap, but tune in. I believe it will release tomorrow of the time that this episode comes out. So that'll actually lead to 3 consecutive days of Alleycats content.
that it will. That will indeed.
Yeah. But that's looking ahead. For now, thank you for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast. If you want to contact the show, you can follow us on Twitter at Aggieville Alleycats. That's capital A, and capital C in cats. If you want to email us, we are AggievilleAlleycats@gmail.com. If you want to follow us on a more personal note, I am at AC Edwards00.
I am at Connor Baltazar, capital C, capital B.
And if you want to support the show financially, please be sure to check out the official Aggieville Alleycats merch store, where you can find the staff-approved Doontang Clan shirt, Play Sandstorm Cowards, as well as Neon Alleycats and many, many other designs. But most importantly, thank you all for listening to this episode of the Aggieville Alleycats podcast, where come rain, shine, or anything in between, we're here to deliver to you the Kansas State sporting news that you so love. Stay safe, Alleycats.